Hello, my name is Mr. Atherall. With my Year 11 class today, we had a chat about the upcoming English literature exam, and there was some nervousness about whether tissue might come up, as tissue is easily the most complex of the poems in the collection. So I'm going to just have a little chat about it. I think make sure you don't obsess about this poem. It could be the name poem, and if it's the name poem, it'll be there in front of you. Probably if it's not the name poem, very few people are going to go and compare it with whatever the name poem is, although of course you can if you think you've got some good things to say about it. So, Tissue by Imtiaz Dharker. So, some important things just about the poem, first in terms of what it's about. So the poem is about this is what I think anyway, it's about what our society is made up of. And she uses tissue, as in tissue paper, to represent important things in our society. So one of the important things in our society is religion, and religious books often made with very, very thin paper, tissue paper. And so one of the important features of our society is religion, and so she references this. She says the kind you find in well-used books, the back of the Quran. So she references the Quran, but I think this is about religion generally, in terms of religion being an important part in our lives. Then we get the reference to maps. So maps made out of tissue paper again, and I think the reference of maps as another thing made out of paper is the fact that our world is made up of borders and barriers and places that you can't cross, and there's this kind of denying of people moving from one area to another, and we're all subdivided up in sometimes quite random ways. And so religion's an important part of our society and our world, and also borders and nations and national identity is also something that's important in our world. Then the other thing that she includes that's made out of tissue is tissue paper is receipts. She has fine slips from grocery shops. So there's three different details there that are all made out of tissue paper. We've got maps, grocery slips, and the Quran. And so the grocery slips, that last one, is about how money is an important thing in our world as well. So three kind of massive things in terms of how humans exist. We exist with religion, we exist with money, and we exist with nations and borders. And what I think Imtiaz Dharker is getting at, and this is just my interpretation, but we need somewhere to go with this, so you can either take this on board or go with your own interpretation. But my interpretation is that she wants to kind of get rid of those things. She thinks those things are not altogether positive, and wants us to recreate the world in a different way. She uses the title tissue to refer to both tissue as tissue paper, but also tissue in terms of skin tissue. And she thinks that the world should be based more around people than it should be based around these constructs that have been created by people, arguably. So, few quotes that are kind of good ones to think about. Now, you can try and memorise these quotes, but in reality, you're going to write about this poem if it's in front of you, and if it's not in front of you, you're probably not going to write about it. So the memorising quotes is perhaps less important for a poem that you are unlikely to choose as your poem of choice. So the important bit is the second half of the poem, from line 25 onwards. That's where I think most of the quotes fall. So it says in this bit, we've got line 29, it says, "Let the daylight break through capitals and monoliths." So daylight, as a really positive image, is breaking through. So for daylight to break through is a suggestion of a new start, a new day. This is a metaphor that the writer is using here as well in terms of the device. There's also the use of enjambment, where day break through monoliths flows into the next sign. So there's this power and intensity that can't be stopped and keeps flowing. And daylight breaking through is a change in these things. Let's break through capitals. Let's break through monoliths. Monoliths sometimes refers to monuments, so stone monuments that kind of depict things about the past. So to break through a monument is to destroy the things that have already existed. Let's have a different kind of society is what I think Imtiaz Dharker is saying. Let's not live life like we've always lived it. Let's think differently about it. The next line after that is going to break through also the shapes that pride can make. So pride has created, in this poem, in her view, created religion, capitalism and money, borders and national identity. Let's break through pride. Let's destroy that. Let's not be proud of these things. They're flimsy, they're made of tissue, they can disappear. And let's create a new kind of society. And then she says what we could replace it with. She talks about a grand design with living tissue. And living tissue is our skin, us. Let's recreate the world based around the people in it. Let's make it serve the people in it, is what I think she's getting at there. A grand design has kind of religious overtones, that this is kind of, let's go back to the beginning and recreate this. We've made these things, but they're not helpful for us. They're actually quite harmful. They're not positive things. And again, enjambment is used with trace of grand design with living tissue, that kind of flow and that power of ideas. So, I mean, those would be the bits that I would be talking about. Those three quotes that I've spoken about there. There's obviously lots of other lines in this poem that are all important. You may choose other quotes if the question demands it. But I think those three are really the crucial ones. So let the daylight break through capitals and monoliths, through the shapes that pride can make, a grand design with living tissue. Those three moments, that recreating of a new type of world, is what Imtiaz Dharker is getting at. And contextually speaking, what's going on here is that in the world, religion is important, and capitalism is important, and nations and borders are important, and they create tension and unrest and difficulty in people's lives, or they can do when they're abused and treated wrongly. So that's what's going on in the world. So that's the context, and that's what she's talking about here. Hope that's helpful in understanding it. Just make sure you know what it's about before you go to the exam. Understand it in case it comes up, but don't obsess over it.